I want to go to my guests. We are joined the man, the legend, Caleb Maupin. How you doing, Caleb? You doing okay this morning?
I'm good. Yeah, it's a little bit rainy here in New York, but bit of a groggy day, but overall pretty nice. Glad to be here. How you been?
I'm doing okay. For some reason, I didn't think you were in New York. For some reason, I thought you were somewhere else. But
Nope, I'm New
either
York
way,
City, just like I've been here for, it's been a while. 15 years now. I think I've lived in this city.
have
Imagine
you?
that. Yeah,
So, where were you originally from?
Ohio. I grew up in a really small town called Orville. It's where they make Smucker's jelly. Then I moved to Cleveland. I was in Cleveland for a few years, and then I thought I was coming to New York City for a month, just for a month, and I never went back.
You're just saying.
Yeah,
Oh, that's funny.
I came on a Greyhound bus for a month, and then I went back and got all my stuff, and I've been here ever since. So
And
pretty
stayed.
wild.
Just for the audience, Caleb Maupin. He's speaker, writer, journalist, political analyst. He's author of several books. His most recent, Neo Trotsky. What is it? What's the name of that book?
Trotsky and the neoconservatives, the whole
Trotsky.
story. Yeah.
Thank you. And also, you can find Caleb on. I lost my place exam. So all right, change your political Center for Political Innovation.
Yeah.
That is the organization that Caleb is associated with. Definitely check them out. They have events very often. I mean, you guys are very active as an organization, so
Yep.
definitely check Caleb out. Caleb, I want to start with, I guess, let's start with the Tomahawk missiles. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this. I seem to be the only channel that's very skeptical of this. I see it as a bluff for leverage. There was a report that came on the Telegraph today that pointed out that even if Ukraine got the missiles, they wouldn't have the capability of firing them, and it's unclear when they could even get them, even if Trump allowed them to get them. So, for me, this is not an issue until it's an issue. And right now, this comes across more as a cry for leverage. This, however, is Trump. He was asked about the Tomahawks, and this is his response. I want to get your take on it. If we can flip this over, there we are.
Sell them to NATO and let them sell them to Ukraine. Yeah, I've sort of made a decision, pretty much. If you consider, I think I want to find out what they're doing with them. Where are they sending them? I guess I'd have to ask that question. That war should never have started.
What a bizarre answer. I need to figure out where they're sending them. Well, obviously, dude, you're sending them to Ukraine. Like, that answer makes no sense to me. Yeah, I think I made a decision, but I need to figure out where they're going to send them. Do you think that they're sending Tomahawks to sit in London or to sit in Berlin? You're sending them to Ukraine, and you, President of the United States, would have to give the order to fire those missiles because Ukraine doesn't have the capability of doing so. Give me your take on this. Do you think this is a real issue? Do you think this is more of a bluff, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I listened to what Russia's saying, and I'm kind of blown away by how Russia's just kind of calling Trump's bluff. Every time he does something like this, they're just like, nah, no, the negotiations are going well as far as we're concerned. Just don't acknowledge, don't be concerned about this. I mean, it would be great to see this war in Ukraine brought to an end. I am certainly disappointed by the Trump administration. Beyond, I mean, they did worse than I thought. Let me just put it that way. I mean, I'm yet to see really any improvements. That said, I mean, is it possible this war in Ukraine could end? Sure, and that would be great. And they did run on a platform of at least, they said they would end it. And it would have been bad if the American people voted against that. But yeah, I'm not thrilled with the Trump administration. But if they actually end this war in Ukraine, that would be great. I thought it was interesting that we saw a member of Congress yesterday come out and just kind of drop a bombshell on a podcast about how Zelensky is sending $50 million every month to Saudi Arabia to a bank account. That's interesting.
Yes.
That's a bit of information that, that's our tax money too, as American citizens, right? It's just getting, thrown in a bank account. And more stuff is coming out. They declassified some information about the corruption. About how this, I mean, we all know that Joe Biden's son has no experience in the energy industry, but as soon as the Ukrainian government was toppled in 2014, Hunter Biden got a job on the board of directors of Burisma Holdings, a natural gas company, where he was making quite a bit of money. And then there was a prosecutor in Ukraine who was looking into that, possibly as an example of corruption. And Biden brags, he got him fired. He got him fired, you know. And now the latest is we have some more declassified information from the CIA. You know, they've released, you know, some information about how Biden was going out of his way to make sure that no one investigated this prosecutor who gave his son a good gig. And that's interesting. And James Comey is indicted, you know, for pushing the Russiagate hoax. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard has revealed that Russiagate was a hoax. That's a good thing. But does this translate into actual action? That would be nice. Now, you know, the other thing that I noticed is, you know, Trump should be giving Nicolas Maduro a medal because he saved the lives of American diplomats in Venezuela. Did you see that? Right?
I did see that, but yeah, I did see that. Correct. Give me your take.
They were going to blow up the embassy. The U.S. embassy in Venezuela was going to get blown up, and they caught the people that were planning to do it and arrested them, and they stopped it. So, you know, Nicolas Maduro should get a medal for saving the lives of American diplomats, and that goes to show you how crooked the Miami mafia really is, right? You know, they really are hoping to provoke an all-out war with Venezuela, and, you know, they've been engaging in all these provocations, violating the airspace, sinking the ships, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, they were going to blow up the embassy as a false flag. And Nicolas Maduro stopped it and revealed it. So I'm waiting for Trump to give Maduro a medal for saving the day. Obviously, he's not doing that. Though it is interesting, I hear Maduro's statements. He doesn't call out Trump. He calls out Marco Rubio. And he appeals to Trump, you know, and after the attempted assassination in Butler, Maduro said, you know, the people who are trying to kill Trump are the same people that killed Kennedy, the same people that are trying to kill me. And so, you know, and he talks about the Miami mafia, right? He talks about, you know, Marco Rubio and his ties to drug cartels. So that leads me to understand that there are divisions within the Trump administration, which has been my perception from the beginning, right? That it's not unilateral. It's not just one entity, right? That there are other factions, and that Tulsi Gabbard and her forces have another agenda. Then you have the Marco Rubios, and there's a lot of different things going on. But that said, let's end this war in Ukraine already. Let's just move ahead and end this war in Ukraine. Why are we threatening and, you know, cooperating with this all-out effort? I mean, it reminds me of the last time Trump was in office. They're just trying to do anything they can to possibly provoke a war with Venezuela. But Venezuela is not going to take the bait. Russia and China have Venezuela's back. Iran has Venezuela's back. Venezuela is locked and solid. They're not going anywhere. So back off, you know, just get those ships out of there and let's move on, please.
Well, I guess there are two things with that. One, Donald Trump is not going to give a congratulation to something that Donald Trump might have been involved in.
Yeah.
Meaning, if you're looking for more provocation, right? If you're looking for a reason to strike Venezuela, be like, oh my God, they blew up the embassy. So, like, Maduro is obviously outing this because he wants to make it very clear. We have nothing to do with this. This is not something we're going to allow. We're not giving you any pretext by which to hit us. So there's that part. The second part, why do you think there are divisions in Trump's administration? I get the sense that Donald Trump has always wanted to get rid of Maduro, and that this is the pressure campaign that he effectively has been engaged in. The first time around in his first administration, he was handicapped by the whole Trump and Russia stuff. This time around, he is not handicapped by that. As you point out, they've pushed that down pretty significantly, and there is no political opposition. So Trump can do whatever Trump wants to do in that office. Republicans are going to back him on it. Doesn't really matter what it is, short of making a deal with the Russians, right? But I get the sense that Rubio, Trump are one-to-one on this. They're on the same page.
Well, there's a lot of information that would tell another story. Now, for example, in Trump's first term, he really wanted to have a meeting with Nicolas Maduro. And at the United Nations, when Maduro was at the United Nations, when Trump was, speaking at the United Nations in his first term, there was supposed to be a meeting, and Mike Pompeo ruined it. And that's, Anya Parampil revealed that. And also, another bit of information is that John Bolton has said numerous times, he's told the story of how the reason the USA stopped pushing, regime change in Venezuela and just kind of pivoted away from it in the first term was because Donald Trump said he was bored of it. And at the meeting of his cabinet, he just basically said to John Bolton and other people in his first term, I'm really bored of Venezuela. Can we start talking about something else? And John Bolton, who, is now anti-Trump, has had his home raided by the FBI. He blames Trump for that. Oh, my goodness. How could he move on from, war in Venezuela? And that that in his first term, Trump had some kind of desire to reconcile with Venezuela. Mike Pompeo moved against it. He had, it was the three guys working his anti-Venezuela policy were John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, and Elliot Abrams. And then, they got bored. Trump said, look, I'm bored of this. I just don't want to do it anymore. And that's how they pivoted away from it. And you remember that whole thing with the food truck. They had the food truck from Colombia, and then they lit their own food truck on fire. And, it was the whole thing. And then Trump was just kind of like, I'm bored of this. I just don't want to do it. And that's what got the neocons quite upset with Trump. And that's ultimately one of the factors in John Bolton's departure from the administration. So I think it is more complicated than that. But we'll see.
Okay, I understand that. I can only go by what I see. And so all of that may be true. And I don't doubt what you're saying. But right now, Donald Trump is murdering Venezuelans.
Yep.
They're in boats. This is like the third or fourth time that he's effectively murdered people in the boats. He has given a speech where in the middle of this kind of deranged speech, he points out, we've murdered so many people in boats that nobody wants to come out, even to go fishing. And so we need to start looking inwards, basically inland, on people to murder. That's the stuff that he's saying.
Yeah.
There's been cargo ships that have apparently landed in Puerto Rico, seemingly bringing in materials for some sort of strike on Venezuela. This doesn't seem like there's any kind of, disambiguation or this kind of distinction between Rubio and Trump on this. He seems held set on, we need Venezuela. And by the way, there may be other political issues driving this. Like if you want to take Russian oil off the market, for example, well, you may need more oil. Now, this doesn't entirely make sense because it would take like a decade to exploit the reserves that are in Venezuela for the benefit of the United States in the way that he may want it. But I don't know, there may be other things that are pushing this. The impact of China that's in South America, meaning that huge port that's in Peru, China has gained far more leverage in South America than what it was during the first term that Donald Trump was in. Meaning he may be looking at this stuff in a different way where he considers Venezuela to be part of national security in the way that that deranged military woman was talking, saying that the minerals and the resources that are on the ground in South America belongs effectively to the United States. I don't know, Caleb. I'm not seeing Trump pulling away on this. It seems like they are, not to mention the New York Times report that they were talking to political opposition, the same political opposition that may have been involved in the whole embassy thing in the first place. Meaning It seems like they're doing everything in their power to put pressure on that government, to get that government to either implode, to get somebody to whack Maduro, or potentially even military strikes if they can't find an easier way to get rid of Maduro. And one last point. Apparently, Trump has cut diplomatic ties with Venezuela because he got pissed off that he told Maduro to leave. Maduro said, I'm not going anywhere, in which case Trump blew a gasket and is now trying to effectively overthrow the government. But correct me if I'm wrong on any of that.
No, I mean, all of that is happening, and but I don't see it going anyplace. I mean, I think, again, if they were going to move in and actually strike, they probably would have done it already. And that Venezuela has signed its partnership, it's enhanced its military ties with Russia. And look, I mean, if Venezuela was going to fall, they would have fallen in 2016, 2017, around then, when things were very, very bad. Things have really improved over the last couple of years in Venezuela. They were in that very serious, kind of food crisis, mode. But that's in the past. That's over. And so now they've solidified power. The economy is getting better. They've got ties with Iran. They're producing their own food in a way that they were not before. And so I think that Venezuela is much safer than they were before. There have been so many attempted coups and so many examples of like somebody in the military trying to move against him, and it just doesn't work. So yeah, I think that Venezuela is safe for now. But it would be great if these threats would end and these provocations would end. And I think they are scraping the barrel, coming up with anything they could possibly figure out to try and provoke a situation like this latest embassy thing, but it just didn't work out. So I hope that what happened in Trump's first term happens again, where Trump just says, can we just move on? I'm bored of this. We'll see.
So you think that they're effectively trying to provoke Maduro, in which case then they can respond to the provocation, but they don't necessarily want to make the move entirely and purely on their own?
it's they need more than just their word, right? And that's what seems to be wild about this. It seems like they just can't go in on the basis of we want to go in, we don't like Maduro. If they could do that, they would have already done that, right? They kind of need something else. The other thing is that Venezuela is getting a lot of support they wouldn't get unless Trump was in the White House, and that's one of the ironic aspects of this, right? You have the government of
Wait,
Colombia, the
explain that.
government. Yeah,
I'm
you
sorry.
have all kinds of governments throughout the region, Chile, Colombia, and all of that. If a Democrat was in the White House and threatening Maduro, they would go along with it. Because it's Trump and because Trump is so hated and all of that, they're actually saying they would support Venezuela. They're opposed to this. You got European countries that are also making similar statements. And, Maduro's getting a lot more support simply because it's Donald Trump is the guy threatening him. When Obama was threatening Venezuela, he got a lot of support from European countries, from, so-called leftists in Latin America and other places. But now because it's Trump and he's so hateable, Venezuela has a lot more support.
Now, apparently, Maduro signed the security pact on Putin's birthday. Intentionally, right? It just waited for the birthday to sign the security pact. But Russia, Iran, China, those countries are so far away. What could they actually do if the U.S. did attack? Meaning they're not involved in preventing those boats from being murdered or those people on those boats from being murdered. I mean, do you think that really has any kind of impact on, let's say, facts on the ground?
Oh, I think it does have an impact. First of all, you got the Wagner group. You got, Russian military kind of, people, not direct military, but military contractors that are very important. You also, China has a naval fleet. I mean, I think China has sent, ships to Venezuela in the past. And, China has military apparatus there. In addition to that, Venezuela, they tend to, get a lot of support, and they sell oil on the international markets, and they are pretty well connected. I mean, Iran and Venezuela are quite close. When I was in Venezuela, that's one thing I noticed was that this was maybe 10 years ago. I just noticed how much, you would go into buildings and you'd see pictures of the Iranian supreme leader, and, they would reference Iran. There was Iranian products and stuff. And that was 10 years ago. Now their relationship with Iran is way closer and way stronger. So, I think, we got to deal with that as well. So, yeah, I think that Venezuela is prepared to defend itself pretty solidly, and that Trump is looking for a pretext. In order to do something, there would need to be a full-on provocation or pretext, and they seem to have prevented that from being the case. And that said, things could pivot in a different direction. But overall, I feel like Venezuela has protected itself. They are being harassed. Trump has, and this is an interesting aspect of Trump, right? You remember January 6th, there were all these foreign constituencies at the January 6th rally. One of, there are buses and buses of Miami Cubans. There were buses of Shah supporters, people that admire the Shah from California, buses of Likudniks from Israel. And it's like all these like foreign constituencies that have like their own like little bone to pick. And they're not working in the overall interest of imperialism. They've got their short-term vendetta against their own government, kind of. And that Trump panders hard to groups like that. And those kind of groups, they don't really care about, how well the global system goes and how to negotiate and be strategic. They just want to overthrow the government that they fled from. And that's a lot of constituencies in America that we have, the people that have lost the revolution in various countries, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, wherever you go, the people that were on the other side of the revolution, China, wherever, they come to America and they want to go home and kill the commies or whatever, kill the radicals, and they don't really care. And Trump has really sucked up to those folks as part of his coalition. So he has to please them. And that, when there's all this talk of the Miami mafia, it's talking about the Miami Cubans, right? It's talking about a group of people. People don't know the details. Luis Posada Carriles, I think he died, but this is a guy who blew up an airline in Cuba, right? Killed a whole bunch of school children on an airline, committed a huge, horrendous act of terrorism, and the U.S. government held him and let him stay in Miami for years after committing a horrendous crime of terrorism, blowing up an airline and killing innocent school children and travelers in Cuba. and the U.S. government held him. And there's the whole case for a while. There was the Cuban Five. There were 5 Cuban kind of intelligence officers that were there investigating these terrorism networks that would go to Cuba and bomb hotels and stuff. And the U.S. government arrested them and held them. And the U.S. government was pointing the Cubans pointed to the U.S. government. They said, "Look, this is where these illegal criminal organizations based in Miami are." And with that information, the U.S. government arrested these 5 Cuban guys and held them. Now they've gone home. They've been returned. But for many years, that was an important cause, the Cuban Five. These 5 Cuban guys who were investigating terrorist and organized crime apparatus in Miami, who the U.S. government detained and held in prison.
Jesus. Wow. That's a hell of a constituency that you effectively have to resolve. Okay, fair enough. From your mouth to God's ears, it just seems like he's very insistent, and it seems like he's trying to put pressure so military strikes wouldn't have to take place. Like, I want to be able to put pressure on the government to see if I can get without having to actually throw a punch in this. Yeah. But the willingness to throw a punch seems to be there, especially with that embassy issue. Yeah. Meaning the fact that the embassy thing took place shows or gives some kind of indication that they are looking for something kinetic to kick this off. Yep. So I hope you're right. I hope the government is solid. I hope the government doesn't collapse. I hope the government.
It reminds you of Havana syndrome. You remember Havana syndrome?
Yeah.
Right. So as soon as the USA opened an embassy in Cuba, there was all this stuff about, they had sound weapons, and the whole thing was very, very bizarre. And then you wonder now that there's been a plot exposed, they were going to blow up an embassy. That raises questions. What was going on with the Havana syndrome, right? Was this, and again, it seems like this Miami mafia is not totally under the control of the American government, right? And they don't want relations with Cuba. They don't want relations with Venezuela. And, maybe, what they were planning to blow up the embassy in Venezuela. And maybe they were the ones that were, making all these American diplomats sick or whatever they were doing. It was the Havana syndrome was a very strange case, right? Because Cuba wanted and worked very, very hard to establish U.S. relations. And the people that were being targeted were American diplomats who were, U.S., CIA people, basically. I mean, U.S. State Department people. So why Cuba's not targeting them? So who was, right? And it makes you think that there are these networks of kind of organized crime, intelligence kind of forces that, that are not, necessarily in line with the overall agenda of the American state, that want to ruin relations and want to provoke military action against Cuba and against Venezuela. Another big thing about Trump's Venezuela narrative, according to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, what country in that region in South America, Latin America, what country has the best drug policies? Cuba. Cuba has the most effective anti-drug policies. There is no drug problem in Cuba. So Venezuela is aligned with Cuba. And the military of Venezuela is trained in Cuba. Cuba has soldiers in Venezuela. Cuba has a network of healthcare clinics and doctors and stuff. So Cuba is very, very close to Venezuela, so much so that a common talking point among the Marco Rubio crowd is to say, Venezuela is now a colony of Cuba. Well, if that's the case, they're definitely not run by drug cartels. The whole drug cartel thing is a joke. I mean, yeah, there's some presence of drug organizations in Venezuela. It's a problem, but Venezuela is inconsequential in the international drug trade compared to a lot of countries in that region. Ecuador is increasingly becoming a serious country with a problem in terms of the drug trade. But Venezuela, I mean, they're there. I mean, it exists, but it's not dominant in the way that it is. And they're using that as a pretext, and it's not. It's just a fiction. According to their own publications, DEA publications, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, everyone looks into it. Venezuela is not the center of any drug problem, right? They're just it's just something they are using as an excuse.
Yeah, it's just wild. That's all. It's amazing how a president can just say, "Yeah, they have drugs, so we're going in," and that's all you require. There's nothing else. There's no law that kicks in. There's no legislative branch that says, "Hey, the president is murdering people off the coast. What's going on with this?" It's just raw presidential power that's naked, which is why I don't even know why he requires a fig leaf to do it. Meaning, like, I get your point. He's looking for something else beyond his own word in order to do this.
I mean, there's an element with the Trump administration of conservatainment has kind of taken over policy where it's like they're not as concerned about what they actually do. They're concerned about how this plays on Fox News and like fulfilling a narrative, right?
Fox
Because
is not
it's,
gonna care.
what's
Fox,
that?
you think Fox would care if Donald Trump invaded Venezuela, if he did airstrikes on Venezuela and just said, well, there are drugs in Venezuela, and he gets some rando person lawyer to come up with some kind of legal justification for it? You really think Fox would care?
They would love that. They would love
Yeah.
that. If he, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, and it's like Venezuela is not really a drug country, but it's like, I'm telling you, conservatainment has kind of taken over, right? So, you know, you listen to Fox, you listen to, you know, the conservative, you know, entertainment or whatever. All the woke people, they're all communists. Now, I don't know how that works, right? You know, but all the woke people are just the same as China, which they're not, right? And they're all a bunch of drug using low lives and all of this. So it's like Venezuela is a Marxist country. So they must be drug using hippies, you know, that are protesting on our campuses and cheering for the death of Charlie Kirk. And so, of course, Venezuela does drugs because a bunch of college Marxists, they all use drugs. And that, you know, and it's like Trump is like fighting a war against the left in the mind of Fox News viewers. And somehow the left is the same as anti-imperialist governments around the world, and they're all using drugs. And and also the other thing is that there's this Reagan worship, this Reagan nostalgia. And, you know, Reagan did use drugs as a justification for a lot of his policies, even though he was arming the Contras that were heavily involved in the drug trade. And, you know, in Colombia, the USA increased its military activities in Colombia, even though the paramilitaries the USA was backing were also heavily involved in the drug trade. But that's a Reagan era talking point, right? Is all the drugs, we got to go in there. And then eventually George Herbert Walker Bush invaded Panama on the pretext of drugs, right? And so it's like we're like reenacting Reagan era policies because on Fox News they eulogize and worship Ronald Reagan and they want to put his face on the dime and all of this. And yeah, to some degree or other, it's just they're not even really concerned about what really happens. They're concerned about how this like really looks nice and cool on Fox News and how Fox News viewers can feel, you know, that this is great or something. I mean, it's a very, very strange time we live in.
But that's all of our politics now. I mean, yeah, I'm agreeing with you, right? This is kind of, Chicago is a mess, so we need to send military into Chicago, and we need to send them into Oregon or whatever else. I don't know. We need to, I mean, you can go down kind of the list on items where these guys are effectively using whatever they want to come up with as a justification to do whatever they want to come up with.